And so on this 18th of October, 2021, I'm standing here in the historic Green Hill Cemetery in Waynesville on this beautiful day. And I'm standing at the graves of my great-great-great-great-grandparents, four greats, William Pinkney and Leanah Corbin McClure. They are buried just here, if you can see it. William, known as Squire Billy McClure, was born in 1803, died in 1866 in November. Leanah was born in 1801. She lived until 1894, lived in every decade of the 19th century. They lived up in the Balsam Gap section. Now, in some of the old records, including some newspaper clippings, you may see, because of measurements taken by the geologist Arnold Guyot, that oftentimes referenced is a location called the McClure Farm. What is meant by that is Balsam Gap, because once the Cherokee boundary was moved far enough west to enable white settlers to purchase property, William McClure purchased property in that area, and so Balsam Gap for years and years was known as the McClure Farm, at least on those old records. They raised a family there. Their oldest daughter was Mary Ann McClure. She went by Polly, and she married Philip Noland, who eventually became the High Sheriff in Haywood County and was killed in the line of duty. If you go to the Haywood County Sheriff's Office today, you will see a display there, and you will see some items that Sheriff Philip Noland was wearing when he was murdered. He was ambushed in the line of duty, and so William and Leanah lost their son-in-law in 1862. Now, William had been born here in Haywood County. He was born and raised in the Crabtree area, his father having moved here, and actually his grandfather having moved here, Andrew McClure, and so he was familiar with the area. It was still Buncombe County in his younger days, became Haywood County in 1808, and by the 1820s, as I say, he was married, living in Balsam Gap, and began raising a family. Interestingly enough, during the Civil War, William remained loyal to the Union. He had had a federal mail contract because he operated a stagecoach line that ran between Waynesville and Webster. Now, remember when Jackson County was formed, and for decades after that, Webster was the county seat. It was the most prominent town. Sylva did not come into prominence until the railroad came through. And so the stagecoach line ran to Webster. He had a federal mail contract. For that reason and others, he remained loyal to the Union, or as was said in the family, he was for Lincoln during the Civil War. Tragically, in the last year of the war, 1865, some raiders came through, and they broke into his spring house, and they were taking some of the items from it. William, or Squire Billy, went out to protest, and one of them, at least the story that comes down in the family, one of those men hit him over the head with a gun barrel, and he was severely injured, so much so that he was an invalid and bedridden for a year until he died the following year in November of 1866. Very tragic end to his life. He was educated. He had a library of books and was good at reading, good at math. He kept up with things well. He had a good bit of property there. And so Leanah was left a widow. Her daughter, Winnie, or Winifred, who's buried here right next to them, actually, for some reason, the inscription on her stone is on the other side from her parents. She stayed on in the house with her mother, Leanah. When William and Leanah's youngest son, Henry Pinkney McClure, known as Uncle Pink, that I told about in an earlier story, came home from Tennessee with sons, his first wife having died, Leanah, his mother, and his sister Winnie helped take care of those boys until he remarried, marrying Sally Winchester. That's another story. Leanah, my great-great-great-great-grandmother, I think I said four greats, lived to see the railroad come through Balsam Gap. And the story goes that she and her daughter Winnie were out on the front porch of the house as the railroad was being constructed in front of the home. A locomotive was brought up and with the supplies, and the track was being constructed in front of that steam engine, and it was sitting there at an idle. chugging, or something like that. And apparently, Granny McClure looked over at Winnie and said, "Why does it paint so, Winnie? Is it tarred?" Think about a panting dog or an animal like that. And a steam locomotive. The sounds are similar. She had never seen anything like that before. She lived into the 1890s, as I say, and passed away. And so that was William and Leanah McClure. Now, the daughter, Winifred McClure, she had a child out of wedlock. She never married. The father of that child, so I was told by at least two different reliable sources when I was growing up, was a man by the name of Leander or Lee Snyder. After he fathered that child, he went on and married another woman, but then went off to the war between the states, and he became a casualty and never returned home. Winnie's daughter was named Julia Ann. She went on to marry Montplot. Aunt Julie, as they called her, was quite a woman. At least on one occasion, when a fox got in her chicken coop, she went out there with a cast iron skillet and dispatched that predator. She wasn't about to be outdone by a fox. So William and Leanah Corbin McClure, with their children, left quite a mark on Haywood County and western North Carolina, as the McClures had been here for some time, moving into this part of the country in the late 1700s. So that's a little something else about folks whose earthly remains have been interred in this old historic location. May God bless you.